It takes a lot to demolish a town. It's difficult to fathom how a town might be devastated. It's here 1 minute and gone the next, with big areas, or in the worst case scenario, the entire thing wiped out. Tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, and other natural calamities are the most likely culprits. And while weather alerts have improved tremendously over time, weather events remain unpredictable and irregular. Even those who are well prepared may not always make it out when the most difficult circumstances arrive. In this video, we'll look at 3 actual towns that were destroyed by severe weather and other natural disasters. Rebuilding was arduous, resilience was tested, and far too many people died. Unfortunately, here today, gone tomorrow has a whole new meaning for these towns and the unfortunate humans who lived in them. Galveston, Texas. On September 8, 1900, a powerful Category 4 storm nearly destroyed the city of Galveston, Texas. On the low end, historians now believe that 6,000 to 8,000 people died. According to less modest estimates, the dreadful storm killed as many as 12,000 people. Many more were seriously hurt. Even more Galveston citizens have lost their homes and businesses. Over 3,000 homes were entirely destroyed and deemed unsalvageable. Thousands more suffered serious harm. Total property losses in Galveston were estimated at the time to be between $28 and $30 million, or well over $1 billion today. Even today, the Galveston hurricane of 1900 is the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history. The majority of the casualties were caused by seawater drowning as a 16-foot, 4.9-meter storm surged across the city's coastal districts. Destructive waves pummeling structures and smashed against individuals. Others were stuck inside buildings as saltwater rose, leaving them nowhere to go. Unfortunately, due to the poor nature of weather tracking at the time, no one had any idea the storm was approaching so rapidly. The intensity wreaked havoc on Galveston, and the entire area had to be cleaned up and rebuilt in the years after the hurricane. Greensburg, Kansas. On the evening of May 4, 2007, an EF5 tornado entirely destroyed the little southern Kansas town of Greensburg. The tornado had been warned of in the vicinity, but no one expected it to be that large, powerful, and destructive to an entire town. And while Greensburg is a small town by any standard, only 1,400 people lived there when the tornado struck. The scope of the devastation was staggering. Except for one structure, the whole downtown area of Greensburg was completely destroyed. In fact, over 95% of the town was leveled and destroyed. Only a few dozen structures on separate ends of town escaped the wrath of the gigantic twister, which blasted through the farming settlement at more than a mile wide. Amazingly, the terrible tornado killed only 11 people in Greensburg. 2 other persons were slain in another, smaller village just outside of it. Dozens more were injured, some critically, but police and paramedics were able to transport the injured to hospitals in the area relatively swiftly. Fortunately, sophisticated weather-watching technology alerted people of the impending disaster, even if no one understood how severe it would be. Greensburg miraculously rebuilt itself during the next 10 years. It even became a green town, with several of its structures designated as eco-friendly and cutting-edge. However, the population has yet to recover to pre-tornado levels, and it seems unlikely to do so. Hinckley, Minnesota. On the night of September 1, 1894, a major fire ripped through the small town of Hinckley, Minnesota. It killed at least 418 residents, though historians today assume that many more people died, as well as many pets and cattle heads in the awful fire. It all began in 1891 when central Minnesota experienced an abnormally prolonged drought. Drought conditions prevailed for the next 3 years, causing soil moisture to be lost gradually. In the summer of 1894, fewer than 2 inches of rain fell, an astonishingly low quantity for that part of the country at the time. Fires had been burning throughout the summer, but none were genuinely major. None until the night of September 1, a Saturday. That evening, a thermal inversion existed in the area. This is a weather phenomenon in which hot air near the ground becomes trapped by a layer of chilly air above it. The hot air cannot leave, and even with strong winds, the dry conditions created by the hot air turn an area into a genuine tinderbox, requiring only a small spark to ignite. Sadly, that is exactly what occurred. A spark was sparked at the Brennan Lumber Company in Hinckley from among the massive sawdust stacks on site. Soon, embers were flying in the wind and catching on other very dry, very dangerous objects about town. In what seemed like a second, buildings and trees were engulfed in flames and blazing with intensity. The people had few options and limited time to get out. Embers were blowing so far and rapidly in the wind that they swiftly engulfed the town and its surrounds. The fires swiftly formed a thick, impassable wall around the town's southeast and west borders before moving north. People hid in underground wells and died from smoke inhalation when they couldn't breathe as the fire spread above them. Other people really jumped into lakes and waited for hours and hours overnight in waist-deep water, feverishly attempting to brush off embers that dropped on them. The final official death toll was 418 persons, and the whole town of Hinckley was obliterated. Locals and historians now, however, agree that much more people were slaughtered than that. Tragically, remains were discovered years after the fire was extinguished. The final known Hinckley fire death was discovered in May 1898, over 4 years after the fire. The town and its inhabitants were totally annihilated.